All right, the Carolina Panthers rolling deep at CJ Stroud's Pro Day, Ohio State Pro Day. The Texans, I think they might have been too deep. I think James Liffert went and his hair. So Scout good hair there. They went too deep to Ohio State Pro Day. But don't take my word for it. We've speculated a lot about it. Let's talk to someone who was actually on the scene, the great Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle. He's out there. He's on the steps. JA, I appreciate you for giving me your time a little bit out there while you're out there in the great city known as Columbus. And I mean that. I think it's a good place. I'm a big Columbus guy. How was the pro day? How was the scene? And the interesting thing about you've got Carolina roots. So this had to be pretty interesting because the team that you covered before you came to Houston, they were more represented than the team you cover now.
Yeah, man. The Panthers had, I mean, it's a cool experience. It's my first time in Columbus, so definitely interesting. I'm about to get some tips from you. But it was definitely interesting because I covered Panthers for 2 years prior and never had I seen them bring that many people to a pro day. So one NFL pro day. They brought about 10 people, including the owner and his wife, who's also the owner as well, and head coach, GM, everybody. So, they're serious about they're going to do the same thing with Bryce Young tomorrow.
Okay, so they're going to roll that deep to Bama too?
Yeah, they're going to roll deep to Bama too. They're serious about getting one of these top quarterbacks. I think these two guys are their top focus. It would seem like CJ Stroud is probably leading right now, but I know they think highly of Bryce Young as well. I wouldn't totally count him out. I would say the Texans have a better chance to get Bryce Young, but I wouldn't totally rule them drafting Bryce Young.
Oh, so you really do think they're going through this evaluation right now?
Yeah, I think CJ is the favorite right now, but they're still going through the process.
What did you what was the whole scene like? Obviously, pro days are scripted, all that. We heard Nick Caserio talk about that. James Liffert was the only one there, right? Is that correct?
James Liffert was there. They had a national scout, John Richer, and they had an area scout, Blaze Taggart. So they had two people.
Okay, so they went 4 deep, three scouts and Liffert's hair. So what was the scene like? Did CJ look good? I know, normally they don't look bad at pro days, but how'd he look?
Yeah. If you look bad at your pro day, something's wrong. But CJ Stroud made a lot of impressive throws. He's known for his accuracy, and he showed that at the pro day. Made a lot of deep throws. The biggest thing about him was whether he could make a lot of these throws on the run, off script throws. And he did a lot of that. And he was on the money with most of his passes. I think he was about 44-51 on his passes. I think he had about three of his receivers drop passes. So he was pinpoint with his accuracy, just like most people say he is and how he says he is. And he's definitely confident, and he showed it that he's going to be a stud. He's going to be a day one starter. If the Texans end up getting him, I'm confident that he can be a good player in this league.
What about the receivers, the guys that were catching the rock? Obviously, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I'm a big Jaxon Smith-Njigba guy. His 40 time, there was a lot of hype with that. Maybe even like more so with substance than CJ, because you didn't expect him to look bad in his pro day. But how did Jaxon Smith-Njigba look? How does his stock look after what you saw today?
Well, yeah, I think Jaxon only had room to grow, right? So he didn't play much last year because of the hamstring injury. So a lot of people were wondering, like, is he going to be healthy? At the combine, he had one of the best performances at the combine, definitely the best among receivers. He did it again, ran a 4.5, 4.8. Some scouts had him at, which is really good for him.
4.48, right?
Yeah, based on his 4.48. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you said 4.8. I was like,
sorry.
That would be a story right there. We just started with that.
Yeah, thanks for correcting me. But yeah. So like he answered a lot of the questions that a lot of people had, and he's looked good. And people you talk to, he was on a squad with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and he was the best player on those teams. I was able to talk to him, and I got a story I'll have tomorrow. But he believes he can play everywhere on the field. I think I'd be surprised if he got past the Texans. I think like other teams are looking at him too. But everybody I talked to out there, when I asked about Jaxon, they say his stock is definitely rising.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you keep hearing, well, he only played in the slot. And it's like, well, they had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and he's playing in the slot. Like, it's not like he was at, I don't know, I don't want to pick on like a college, but it's not like he was at Baylor or something like that, or U of H or Penn State or something and not playing outside. They literally had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. So why would you change that?
Exactly. You had some of the best wide receivers in who about to be in the NFL, like in the NFL right now. Like
Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. was on that squad. Like, and he led that team in receiving yards and receptions. So, what does that tell you? Like, Duke and ball, he was put in that position because that's where they needed him there. That's what he told me. And he can do more than just slot.
He's a pretty confident dude, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Good dude. I think Texas fans would definitely love him.
Yeah, he's from Rockwall. He got out of the state, and Texas didn't really get him. But I'm not bitter about that at all. How did Marvin Harrison Jr. look? A lot of people, you've heard it. You're online. You're a man of the people as well. You've heard the tank for Caleb Williams and let's look ahead and all this, and now you got Texans fans talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. and it's hard not to like him, man. He looks so damn much like his dad. It's almost crazy. What was it like? How did he look out there?
He looked great too. I think he has that potential, that superstar potential. Coming out won't come out until next year, but he does everything right. He has great size. Kind of reminds you of his father. I think he's going to be probably that one of the top guys, wide receivers coming out of that draft class coming in 2024. He's a guy to watch for sure. And he's only going to get better. And he was like great last year. So, he did everything he was supposed to do as well.
You got the Buckeye lacrosse up there and everything. You're doing your thing. You're walking around campus, checking it out. What have you thought about Casario's approach this offseason? We're about 10 days in. Seems like they've added quite a lot of pieces. I said earlier that it's kind of like you grade it. I don't want to say on a curve, but like whenever they sign somebody, like whenever the Texans sign somebody, like on one hand you say, well, this isn't a solid, this isn't your top receiver, a top receiver on a good team, and like Robert Woods and Brown. But then on the other hand, you say, well, on the Texans team, he's damn near the top of the depth chart. Like Denzel Perryman would have been second on the team in tackles last year, or fifth on the team in tackles despite missing 5 games. What do you make of Casario's approach?
With the free agent class, I think that he's done a decent enough job. I think that they had to fix their offensive line, and by trading for Shaq Mason and by locking up Laramie Tunsil, and I still think they need a starter at center. I think they've done some really good job. Same thing on defensive line. Sheldon Rankins was a good signing. I thought that there were areas that they could have gotten better on, but this wasn't the greatest free agency class. In recent years. It was a little bit down year is what most people would tell you, kind of like around the league. But I think they did what they had to do. Who was it that you mentioned earlier before? I got a little bit distracted.
Woods.
Somebody was trying to pass me. Yeah. I think there weren't a lot of elite wide receivers in the free agent class. And rarely are there ever. Receivers really either get traded or they get traded somewhere or they get drafted to a new team. So they rarely hit free agency. So there wasn't much they could do, I think. But it means, though, that the Texans need to draft a number 1 wide receiver. And that's why I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba would be a really good option for them because he's definitely wide receiver 1, and they could potentially get him there at 12. But I think Robert Woods could be a good complementary piece. It would concern me, definitely, his injury history and hasn't had a great season since. Denzel Perryman is another guy who has an injury history. He hasn't had a full season his entire NFL career, but he's a great run defender. Great. I don't want to take that away from him as well. Pro Bowl guy, can make tackles, but health is a legitimate concern. So I think that, Casario, he spent more money than he has in the past. So I think he's definitely trying to win, and I think they made improvements. It's just they're going to have to hit in the draft. There's other areas that they got to hit on as well.
So what's the lead tomorrow? Like if you everything that you've taken in, what's the lead, the things that people need to know? Like if I was looking at the bullet points of what they need to know, what are the things that Texans fans need to know from this pro day?
That they might not get CJ Stroud. I think they might get Landry Locker. I think they might get Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think they might get Stroud Jaxon. 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 I He might go number 1, but if he does fall to them, I think regardless they're going to have a good quarterback at number 2. I don't think that the Texans need to trade up, to be honest with you, unless they're just in love with CJ Stroud. I think there's not much of a difference there in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I think the talent level is very similar. I think a lot of people think Bryce Young's a little bit more talented, but the size is definitely a concern and durability. But if you have faith in that, I think the Texans, regardless of who they get at number 2, it's going to be a good quarterback, and they'll have their day 1 starter.
JA, I appreciate you, man. You got you in the stairs. It's like an authentic experience. I can see the Buckeye above you. You got people coming in the background. You're waving them off like a pro. Appreciate you very much for giving us the boots on the ground perspective of what's going on at Ohio State.
Of course. Thanks for having me, bro.
All right, there you go. It's my guy Jonathan Alexander here on in the locker room live from Columbus. So you heard it. CJ Stroud, impressive. He still thinks that Bryce could be an option. Jonathan Alexander, you can follow his work on the Chronicle. Check him out. He does a great job. Him and Cabina at the Chronicle. I've loved that new wave. I've loved that blood. You know how I feel about John McClain. That's my guy. But I love this new blood on the beat with the Cabinas, with the Alexanders, with the DJ Bieniemys, with the Cole Thompsons, who we're going to have on live. I just like this new wave of beat guys. And if I forgot to mention your name, no disrespect, but I'm loving this new blood. I'm loving it. And I love that Jonathan gave us his time there. Still a Bryce Young guy, but I was getting the perspective of Jonathan Alexander live from The Ohio State University. Subscribe, like, no matter who it is, whether it's CJ, whether it's Bryce, when it comes to this Texans game. We are all in this together. Have a good one.